Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast, powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every episode, we talk to the experts and we keep you updated on the ever-changing digital marketing and social landscape. This episode is no different. I'm joined, as always, by producer Will. And producer Will, I got to congratulate you, give you your props. This will be the biggest guest in the history of the Business Social program. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, everything came together. We hinted at this about a month ago, maybe, and it all worked out. So definitely a good get for us.
All right. So this is a panel series, continuing our panel series. This episode is all about how athletes can use their platforms for change. We are joined by Karin Kildow. She is Director of Content Strategy over at Uninterrupted. Spent the last 10 years working in social and digital for Red Bull Media House, where she trained over 150 athletes. She personally works with DeAndre Hopkins, PK Subban, and our guest that we've been talking about, Olympic gold medalist Lindsey Vonn, who retired last year as the most successful female athlete in the history of ski racing. No big deal, Will. 82 World Cup wins, 8-time world medalist, 3-time Olympic medalist. I mean, this is big news for the Business of Social podcast.
And I mean, if you just take away all the accolades and stuff, I think just two people that get the space.
Right.
No matter if they have 0 followers or whatever they have combined. I mean, just they understand how social works and how to use it properly.
Yeah, and I saw Lindsey recently on Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man with Emmanuel Acho, and was really inspired by that, and her conversation with PK as well during that. And she just gets social. You can tell that Karin helps her a lot with everything as well, but she has 5 million social followers, and I've yet to really sit down podcast style, Will, with an athlete and ask them, how do you look at this following? You have 5 million followers. How do you look at that outlet? How do you use your platform for change, for good, for monetization? Because that's important when your game check all of a sudden doesn't come because of a COVID situation. So I'm excited to ask from an athlete point of view all those questions that, you know, we've had a lot of conversation on this podcast with guys like Dave Sethi at Instagram, TJ Adelaso at Twitter, Blake Lawrence at Open Doors about, you know, athletes using their platforms in a way. So I'm really excited to talk with both of them. Obviously, Karin with all her work with multiple athletes across multiple disciplines. And of course, Lindsey Vonn. I mean, excited for that.
I was going to say, I think, damn, I don't know what the hell I was going to say. Just cut it right there.
All right.
I completely lost my train of thought.
We'll cut Will there, and we'll leave that in. I mean, it happens. We're humans. You always don't.
I don't remember what I was going to say. It was a good point, though.
All right, I appreciate that. That's all I asked for, is just for you to say, David, that was a good point. All right, it's you guys will really enjoy this one. Karin Kildow and Lindsey Vonn on the Business of Social podcast. All right, we have a very special edition of the Business of Social podcast, panel edition. This time we wanted to dig into athletes using their platforms for change and for good. So super excited to introduce two amazing women in the space. Of course, we have Karin and Lindsey. I'll let both of you, I'll start with you, Karin, if you can just give the listeners a little bit about you and what you oversee.
Yep, my name is Karin. I've spent the last 10 years in social and digital strategy, 8 years at Red Bull Media House, and the last 2 years at LeBron James Media Company Uninterrupted and Spring Hill Company now. And just working really closely with athletes, both telling their stories and then helping them tell their stories themselves through their own channels. And then, you know, personally, I've worked over the years with Lindsey on growing her social channels and kind of evolving that, and just through my friends that are athletes, helping them grow their channels. So DeAndre Hopkins, PK Subban, and Nick Young.
Awesome. And Lindsey, we obviously, a lot of us know you already, Olympic gold medalist, retired last year as the most successful female athlete in the history of ski racing. But I know you have a lot of stuff going on outside of just being an Olympic gold medalist. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, as Karin said, I'm the host of a new Amazon show called The Pack, which I've been working on before COVID took over. I started my own production company. We have Lindsey Vonn Foundation, which Karin helps with social, and my other sister is the director, so family business. And what else am I doing? I have I'm finishing my memoir. I have my own ski line with Head. I have I've partnered with Project Rock with Dwayne Johnson.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm now co-owner of Unique Goggles, and so we have
awesome. Just a couple things, a few things going on, all good. Karin, I would love to start off, 'cause I know we wanted to really speak about athletes and using their platform for good and for change, but you've worked with so many athletes. I know at Red Bull, you personally trained over 150 athletes. You mentioned your relationships with obviously Lindsey, PK, DeAndre, Hopkins, who's now an Arizona Cardinal. I'm excited to see him team up with Kyler Murray there. But what is like the main thing you preach for athletes, understanding the reach they have, the platform they have? So what are some of the core tenets that you preach time and time again anytime you work with an athlete?
Yeah, I think the key is, I think a lot of athletes, sometimes they kind of wake up in the morning and haven't really been trying, and they have, over 1 million followers, which can be really stressful. Sometimes they're really working really hard every day, trying to turn and get that following. Maybe if they're a smaller Olympic athlete or action sports athlete at Red Bull. But I think the key things is to just start out with a base of 3 pillars of what am I trying to do with these channels? So whether it's make people laugh or teach people something, usually your sport is probably one of those pillars, but you really want to think about what are the other 2 and use those as your North Stars, because it's hard to wake up every day and say, what should I post? And especially if you have a huge following, it's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of ramifications behind it. So it's nice if you kind of start from a baseline of I know I want to talk about my love for football, my love for cooking, and my love for my family. And then all those buckets then open up opportunities for, brand deals and shows and, apparel, merchandise, all those things start to open up if you're really clear with what your pillars are. So that's
awesome.
kind of the very baseline thing I work with athletes on. And then from there, we work through some of the kind of mental roadblocks they have, because sometimes people are very nervous. Sometimes they love sharing and share too much. So it's kind of from there, we can work through some of those kind of deeper issues of social and how do we get those so that everyone is on the same page and you feel confident with what you're posting every day.
Not everybody's comfortable doing a selfie every day. I get it. I'm one of those people. So,
it's hard.
Lindsey, you have over 5 million followers across your social accounts. How do you look at it from being an athlete? What have you found the best way or the best recipe to use your platforms?
Well, I feel like as long as I listen to Karin, I'm good to go. I mean, while I was skiing in my career, it was pretty easy because, I have skiing, I have fitness, I have fashion, I have philanthropy, pretty clear buckets of content that I can create and open the door for a lot of different things for me, from commercials with Reese's to, obviously different deals, Under Armour, Rolex, whatever it was pretty easy to fill all of those buckets. But now it's a little bit more challenging. So I don't really have the recipe currently, but like I said, I'm just listening to Karin and, what used to be my buckets aren't really my buckets anymore. And that's been kind of our challenge right now. But my interests are still the same. So that's good. But it's not always really clear, what you want to put out there. And so I think it does take a little bit of time to kind of figure out what you want to accomplish, who are you looking to give content to, who are your consumers. And I think those are important things to keep in mind. But like I said, not always cut and dry.
Yeah, and I think, but you actually touched on something really important that's awesome to hear an athlete of your stature say is you obviously hire a financial planner, you hire your lawyer, right? But when it comes to social, I think it's, me and Karin have probably been screaming from the rooftops for a decade now, but it's this is so important. And you're obviously not going to probably have the same type of algorithm, detail and all those things that go into social as maybe a Karin has who's been there. So it is awesome to hear you say that, I'm going to go to an expert to help me kind of, wade through all the different things I can use for social, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it used to be a lot easier, before it was this new shiny toy and everyone was playing with it. And it was oh, this is so fun. I can, show a different side of my personality that I couldn't show, kind of in my realm of the skiing world. But then, as time went on, it became, a lot more
Like
tricky.
this is a business almost, you know?
This is a business.
Yeah.
A, it's a business. B, there are a lot of ramifications, as Karin said, to what you put out there. You have to be careful with what you do. And now with all the algorithms, it's not just, you know, you're the first person that comes up on the ticker. It's like they, you know, really, there's a lot of different hoops that you have to jump through to get your account to be seen. And that's something that's not my expertise. Like I can put out great content, but if I don't do it the right way or the right time, you know, then it's not going to get any traction at all. Yeah. So that's where I lean on Karin, because she's obviously been in this space for so long, and she's always helped me along the way. But I think even more so in the past 3 years, it's become so much more apparent that you need someone's help. And I still post everything myself, but still having someone to lean on is really important.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I did. So at Red Bull, we were sitting there with all these influential athletes who, you know, were the voice of our brand. And at the same time, I was working in social strategy on this massive international media company. So I was just saying like, hey, we're seeing these insights of video works best, vertical video works best. And then I would just apply those to Lindsey and say, hey, Lindsey, I think you should post vertical video.
And everyone was like, you can't do that. Like, no, but Karin says.
Yeah.
And then Karin says,
she knows.
I'm going to do that.
And it just, you know, it's like, and I think that's my biggest takeaway is athletes don't realize that their social channels are media companies if they choose to use them that way. And it just takes that expertise to say, hey, this is the newest optimization. This is how you're going to grow. And what we did with Lindsey a lot that I think contributed to her success is she would listen to the advice, obviously, and then we found really core people around her that were always always filming her and getting like really exclusive content. So at the Olympics, when she's pushing out of the starting gate, that's a spot that only her coach can get to. NBC can't get to it, and so we did one video on.
Karin's like, gotta post this, and I'm like, this seems kind of silly. Like I do this every time. And she's like, no, like no one else can see this but your trainers.
And I think like Joe Burrow running out of the tunnel to the LSU stadium this year was like one of the most engaging pieces of content on social this last year. And to your point, Lindsey, it was just them following him running out to the.
It's natural. It's like, this is what I do, but it got like that was like the highest viewed video of all channels
for the entire Olympics.
I'm like, that was big, and I didn't expect it, but she did, and so that's the thing. It's good to have someone else's perspective because sometimes while you're in kind of that world and that bubble, you don't see.
And also too, I would assume being a world-class skier like you are, you're kind of focused on another discipline at the time. So like worrying about Instagram Reels and how the algorithm is probably not on the top of your to-do list.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing that Karin said, you know, there's people, she kind of was strategic and it's like, you know, there are people around me that can take these videos while I'm doing my job. You know, I can't manage all of these things at the same time, you know, and that is Karin's job. So it's like, let her do her thing and let me do my thing, and we come together and, you know, make the social account work.
I'd love to get your thoughts, Lindsey, because I haven't asked the athlete this question yet, but you know, obviously with everything that happened with COVID, there's a real chance now and in the future where your game check stops coming. If you're an NFL player, if you're in the Olympics, and your main income could potentially be put on pause for a while. Do you think that more athletes that you know and in the space in general are going to look at their social as a business more, because that's actually, like what you said, is a business and could be a paycheck if in fact, you know, that main paycheck goes away?
100%. And I mean, we've kind of been trying to preach that all along, is that, you know, you can monetize your social media. You know, most of my contracts nowadays are, you know, how many social posts can you do? How many views do you have? What's your following? You know, what's the analytics behind it? How many men, how many women, what age group, what demographic, where do they live? You know, those are all really important things for any company going forward. And now with COVID, you know, our traditional marketing is not really relevant anymore. 100%. You know, you can't do these big production commercials. You know, obviously for athletes that are competing, that are playing, they might not, like you said, be getting a regular paycheck. So they have to really be strategic and forward thinking and find creative ways to make that happen. And social media is a very, I wouldn't say easy, but it's a platform that's right there. There's a platter. You just got to put the right things on it and then sell it to somebody, you know? And Karin, you know, Karin's strategy is, I mean, that's why I've been able to get all the deals that I've gotten, because skiing isn't in the mainstream media.
Right.
Like if you look at what I'm giving to a company, it's mainly social media. You know, I'm not prime time.
That's your
basketball.
Leverage. Right.
You know what I mean? So for me, social has always been important, but I think now more so for, you know, other professional athletes, basketball, baseball, football, hockey, you know, social is going to be the next platform for everyone to be monetizing.
And Lindsey, you mentioned your friend The Rock, obviously, and Karin, I'd love for you to speak on this. Like, don't get it twisted. Like The Rock and Kevin Hart, these movie stars, there's a reason they can demand these salaries and get these box office numbers, because they're, to your point, Lindsey, in their contracts, that's a huge part of the marketing, is posting on each other's social media and having these conversations. And it's amazing, as you grow your social following, as you grow that, you know, leverage, that can help you in a lot of other deals outside of just the social stuff.
Yeah, and I think it also just, the thing I always tell people is like, it is marketing that you can hold on to, so you keep those followers. So whether you get injured and all of a sudden you're not on TV, or you retire and you have to move on to your next endeavor, you keep those followers. And as long as you can bring them along for the ride, like The Rock has done so beautifully over the years, then you can start to really make that into its own business, and it adds fuel to every single thing you do. But I think like Lindsey, you know, again, she's not primetime ESPN, and she had some major injuries that took her completely out of ski racing for, you know, sometimes months or a year at a time. But like she was able to keep her followers engaged through that whole journey, and then, you know, at the end of the day, have her social following be even bigger for it. And then now every deal, she can use those followers. And I think it's something that athletes, you know, some of those NFL athletes, their careers can be really short. So it's like, use the time you have right now to grow the following. And then from there, you can use that following forever. So it's even more valuable, I think, sometimes than PR, where it's like, or press, like you get the cover of a magazine and that's great for the moment. But what happens to those eyeballs? Like they fall away. Whereas on social, you bring people in and you keep those followers for hopefully your lifetime.
Yeah, I remember too, like, rest in peace, but when Kobe tore his Achilles, that's when he really started taking social seriously, and he walked his fans through the recovery of that Achilles injury. And it was just like, I mean, exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. And as a huge Laker fan myself, I just couldn't get enough of those updates on a daily or weekly basis. So I think fans enjoy when you peel back the curtain, like Lindsey mentioned, and I can see the view of the coach when she goes down the mountain is so exclusive and so amazing to follow. So that's awesome.
Lindsey's actually posted a couple right out of surgery videos. Like, she didn't approve of that. I was like, Lindsey, maybe this is bad, but like those are the moments that people
you might get flagged on Instagram for inappropriate content or something. Yeah, gotta be careful. Speaking of athletes using their platform for change, I know, Karin, you and I talked about DeAndre Hopkins, who you work with closely, and I'll let you do it justice more than I can, but I would love for you to speak about what went down at Clemson, you know, why he was so passionate and what ended up happening, which, you know, 26,000 petition signatures later made some real change.
Yeah, that was one of the most amazing projects I've worked on, I think, with an athlete. And from the first day I met DeAndre and was talking about what he wanted to do, he's like, I really want to change the name of Clemson University. It's bothered me my whole career. And, you know, the campus is built on past slave plantation, and they do have prominent figures throughout the campus that are very public slave owners and pro-slavery advocates. But it's always been protected under the Heritage Act. And so, long story short, when, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement really started picking up, DeAndre was like, this is the time. I want to remove John Calhoun and Tillman from the names on Clemson University. And obviously that seems like a big endeavor when you first hear it. But I was really lucky to reach out and connect to some of the professors and students at the campus that were already kind of just starting to re-up this petition. And I think the key to success was I really talked to them about, what is this going to take? What is the college, you know, thinking about this? Who on the board is going to push back on this name change? And we got really deep and figured out that the key thing that they needed for success was consistent, pervasive national news, because otherwise it's easy to kind of sweep under the rug or not deal with. And so I was like, perfect. They had all the groundwork, and DeAndre had the following and the passion for the topic. And so, it was something that happened really quickly, and the students had the petition. DeAndre posted it out and kind of gave his background on how much it meant to him. He got Deshaun Watson. Then the Clemson football team really got involved, and it was 2 days of petition signatures, 2 days of SportsCenter, ESPN coverage for DeAndre and the story. And then on day 3, the board decided to change the name and remove John Calhoun Honors College and Tillman from a lot of the buildings on campus. So it was something that had been, he'd wanted to do his entire life. DeAndre grew up in Clemson and had always been bothered by it. And through the power of partnering with the right people and putting out the right message on social, he changed it in 3 days. And he was like, I'm almost in tears. This means so much. And I don't think, because the students and faculty had tried to do it multiple times before, but it really just took DeAndre being the figurehead and putting the pressure on from a national scale, and that it really worked. So I think
using his social to do that was
he didn't do any interviews. He didn't disrupt his training or anything like that. He just put out a tweet and an Instagram post with the links, and it happened. So I think it was a really good case that athletes, I feel like if you really pair a cause that means something personally to you, where your audience is steeped, his audience is steeped in that Clemson football crowd. So it's they all were able to rally behind his cause. And so it was, for me personally, I think it was better than taking on the entire movement. He took on a mission that meant something to him, and he had the ability to change, and it happened. So I think it was a good example of what all athletes can do in their communities, and in areas that they want to see change, they really do have the power to do it with a single tweet.
And you mentioned something earlier that some athletes wake up and they just have 1 million followers and what do I do now? And I've always said, I would love, Karin, if you agree with this statement, but you have the Kawhi Leonards and Tim Duncans of the world that they don't want media. They don't want to be doing anything on social. We get that part. But I've always said, man, even if you post once a month and you just kind of, open your social channel so people can follow you, then if you have a passionate thing like DeAndre, or if you want to raise money for cancer research, at least you have that platform, right? Where you may not be the social butterfly that's doing selfies all the time, but at least you have a group of your following that you can actually make change for if you so choose.
Yeah, and I always say, in the old days, athletes used to have to wait to win the championship or win the Olympics to be on the cover of the magazine or the cover of the newspaper for people to be able to see their face. That was the only distribution that there was.
Yeah.
Now, every single athlete has their own magazine or newspaper or TV station, whatever you want to look at it as, but they have that distribution in their own hands. So if you choose not to use it, you're throwing away the ability to talk to millions of people. And I think that is the newest, most valuable thing that social has been able to give people, is you can speak to millions of people all at once. You don't have to wait for the media company to tell you your story is important. And I think especially the smaller stuff that matters to your community or smaller subgroups of what you care about, social is a really good way to do that, where sometimes massive sports news isn't going to cover your story, but you can cover it yourself.
I've always used the example with LeBron, if you look at the arc of social and digital and how it's changed, you start with, when he's changed teams, you start with the decision and Jim Gray on ESPN. Then it was a pinned article with SI after he went back to Cleveland. And then when he went to Lakers, it was a tweet on Clutch Sports. Mm-hmm. LeBron James has signed the 4-year deal. And to see that, I guess that dynamic between, I need to go out to the media, I need to sit down with the Jim Gray to tell my story, or I'm just going to tweet it and I own the conversation.
You don't need the media anymore.
Yeah.
Most athletes, LeBron, obviously, but even me, I think I have more followers than ESPN. So you just look at the amount of eyeballs and the amount of people that you can reach. It's astounding. And, you have the power. You don't need, to do something like win the Olympics to get a call from ESPN or NBC or Wall Street Journal. You can just make your own message, send it out, and everyone sees it and everyone's going to pick up on it. So I think the power shift is definitely in our favor, and it's great because so many more people are getting recognized as opposed to just the people that journalists or media choose to promote.
Mm-hmm. And I always look like, watch a traditional newscast and see how many tweets or Instagram posts they're reporting on.
Yeah.
Now the media is reporting on their media versus the other way around,
And Lindsey too, I'm guessing when you go to a journalist or the media, they can always, have a bias, or they can twist your story a little bit. And when you can go straight to your followers, you can be as real, you can have that conversation that darn right you're not gonna open up the paper on a Sunday like, what? I didn't say that, or whatever it may be, which has to make you feel more comfortable.
I mean, it hasn't happened to me as often as it happened to other people, but there is always an element of misrepresentation when you give an interview. They can shape the article in a positive, negative way in the way that they choose. And on social, you are responsible for the entire message. So your fans are going to hear exactly from your mouth what's going on, what you feel, what you accomplished, what you didn't accomplish, whatever you want to put out there. That's the story, not what someone else is dictating to you as a story, and changing potentially the outcome of sponsorship deals or how the public views you. That has a huge impact on how you can make money. People don't realize that one article can limit your ability as a person, as an athlete, to make money, and we're taking that power away from them and giving it to ourselves.
And also the nature of the medium, right? If someone sits down with you for a 15-minute sportscast at the end of the news segment, they only have so much time, so they're going to clip a few different moments. Where if you really want to sit down and do a 7-minute 2-camera speech about whatever, I mean, you can add all the context in the world without being, broken down that way.
Exactly.
And Lindsey's actually done that, where she's put out statements on Facebook, Instagram, social, and then all of her interviews, she'll say, my statement's on Facebook if you'd like to read it, but I'm not going to speak anymore on that topic. And I think that was it's a really good way. It was, during the Olympics when she needed to be focused, but it's like, I've said my piece, it's all public, you can read it, but I'm not going to keep rehashing it.
Right.
So I think it's a good defense too.
I love that. I think we'd be remiss not to speak about, obviously, what's going on in our country. We mentioned Black Lives Matter with what DeAndre was passionate about. But the Jacob Blake situation, it's just so heartbreaking. And I'm sure you guys saw it as we record this podcast, it was after Game 5 of the Clippers-Mavericks series. But Doc Rivers' very emotional speech, and he said, quote, "It's amazing to me how we keep loving the country and this country doesn't love us back." Again, another heartbreaking, statement. And I think the NBA players are having a difficult time understanding, they're taking a knee and they're wearing T-shirts that say Black Lives Matter and they're saying Breonna Taylor's name, and they just don't know if this is still happening with Jacob Blake. Is this making change? And I guess I'll start with you, Karin. With such a difficult subject like we're dealing with right now in our country, who have you seen do a good job? What are you saying to your athletes? How can you use your platform for good and with such a difficult topic?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of not trying to take the whole, the whole topic on personally every day. It's find the point in the conversation that you feel connects with you personally, that you can speak on credibly and you feel informed enough to talk about. And then how do you use that and make a place for people to actually enact change? I think it's one thing to speak about it or post about it. And we've seen that is so powerful in a lot of ways, but how do you add that last element of enacting change and giving people somewhere to go or something to do to help solve the problem? With LeBron and More Than a Vote, I think they're doing a really good job of that, of just saying we are taking on the issue of voter suppression. We're going to create an organization to help fight that. We're going to make sports stadiums polling centers. And that is our way of changing these huge, massive issues that are systemic and are pervasive around everything. But what we can do is help people vote, get more people to vote, and then help people be informed on what they're voting about. So I think that little end piece of enacting change, and that goes back to DeAndre, sign this petition and change this name. it helps drive that positive movement forward without it feeling like I'm taking on the issues of the world, but I'm doing my part to make a tiny step forward that might help the larger movement.
Yeah, go ahead, Lindsey.
I mean, it definitely is. It feels oftentimes like we're trying really hard to make change and nothing's actually changing. And obviously we're privileged white women, so we're trying as best we can to help, but it often feels like what change can we make? But I kind of defer to PK on this. He's Canadian, so he's in a little bit of a different boat, but he likes to, instead of, talk about it or put it on social media, he likes to create foundations and causes. And he's more of like the silent guy that says, okay, what are the problems?
Kind of behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, what's the problem? How do I help solve it? And so, kind of when Kaepernick knelt, he was actually just traded to Nashville in the South, Canadian, Black player in the NHL. So he was put in an interesting position. They're asking him, are you going to kneel? And he's like, this isn't even my country. I'm not going to disrespect something. I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
But he said, but this is a problem. And so I'm going to try to solve it. And so he created a program called Blue Line Buddies, where he brings 2 underprivileged youth and 2 police officers to every game and meets them, signs their autograph, take pictures, and creates this bond within the community. And he started in Nashville. They still do it, even though he is now in New Jersey. They do it in New Jersey, and he's trying to get all of the teams in the NHL to do it. So I look at that as my example. What can I do, in my world to create change within the community? I keep thinking, if I post enough things about, making changes, maybe I can help change, but that's actually not doing anything. I think you have to narrow your focus a little bit more to create change within your community, and that will in turn create a ripple effect. But you're not going to change everything, but you can change some things within your niche.
Yeah, and I think what's, positive for me in this entire situation is, we all understand this can't just be a Black issue. They can't just fight this on their own. And what gives me hope is I think there's been a lot of white athletes. There's been white people in general that are taking this head on, and it's just a human rights issue. Like our brothers and sisters are being shot in the back, unarmed, and that's what gives me hope. And I think I'm sure you've seen that in your community too, right, Lindsey? Just like this is becoming everybody's issue, not just one race's issue.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, especially in the athlete world, everyone is taking this on as this is a human rights issue. This is a global issue. This is something that is systemic that we all need to get behind. And I do feel like everyone is behind it. Now the challenge lies in how do we actually change systemic racism? Like, there's so many different levels of it. It's hard to really process, but I do feel like everyone is really rallying around this and we all want to see change. It's just, how now do we put that into effect?
Love it. I really enjoyed, and I'm a big fan of Manuel Acho, what he's doing with the uncomfortable conversations with the Black
We're going to talk about him.
You're like,
yeah, he's amazing.
You're doing the best. I was like, Emmanuel.
Yeah, exactly. I like him a lot. And I loved you and PK on that as well. I thought you guys, and I just love people having those uncomfortable conversations and being real about that. Lindsey, what was your biggest takeaway from sitting down and just that experience?
Well, Rachel was great. And I felt like I got a different perspective that I'd never gotten before. And my purpose on going on the show was to really learn. And I want to have the uncomfortable conversations because I want to learn how to be a better person and, how to be more informed, how to support people better, how to support PK better, how to support his family better. And I wrote Emmanuel the first episode. I cried my eyes out for such a long time. I was like, I need to have a conversation with this man. So I wrote him and I was like, Emmanuel, I need you to help me have this conversation. And so I learned a lot. I learned that I'm not the only person having these feelings, having these uncomfortable conversations, and that, Rachel's perspective to me because I feel guilty, she then said, well, I was that person that was making you feel guilty. So I think, this movement has definitely opened people up to having these conversations and really understanding what each other is feeling and how do we best support each other and how do we best learn from each other and how do we become better human beings. So I give full props to Emmanuel for what he's doing. And I think this has definitely spurred a lot more uncomfortable conversations than just what he's having on the show.
And
yeah, you mentioned, go ahead, sorry, Karin.
I was just gonna say, I think his genius was really like touching on that exact point, that everyone like felt this feeling they wanted to do something, but no one had a place to say, I'm not sure exactly what I'm asking or what I should do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, like, when Lindsey saw it, she's like, oh my God, this is exactly the conversation I want to have. And I think that's why it's had such widespread success.
Yeah, and Lindsey, you mentioned a quote that really hit me, which was, I've had a lot of difficult moments with people I'm very close to. And I think during this time, we've all had that. And I think, I'd love to get your thought on this, if we can have the conversations in the home with the parents, with the sister, brothers, the cousins and uncles, and educate some people that may just be a little bit ignorant, may just not understand that point of view. I think that's what you guys are talking about. Like, we can start kind of grassroots efforts and make change over time. That's what I think anyway, but I'd love to see if you feel like that's a good start too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the change has to first come within every household.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pass down the message of anti-racism. We can't continue to let it continue to grow. We have to stop it within each and every home. And how do we do that? We have conversations, we educate ourselves, we learn, we listen. Those things have to happen. It can't just be, we're all pretending and, posting things on Instagram. That's great and all, but, what are we doing within our own communities to create that change? And that starts within your own home and within the circle of people that you're around.
And I think it's like just explaining, like, I think Emmanuel does a good job of like taking really simple questions, but unfolding why this would be offensive to somebody. And I think some, maybe older people or people who are not as aware can just be only seeing things through their own perspective and not understand. Like, I think when he explains things, you're like, oh, I see why that would be offensive. And I think that's kind of the conversations you have to have with people who are from different generations and are like very removed from that feeling themselves.
But even me, like, I didn't know some things were offensive because I just don't have that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the importance of having these conversations, is learning that perspective, learning why, things are offensive and making sure that you make that change and you help others make that change. And then that ripple effect hopefully will take hold.
I know, to just be self-aware, I admitted too, like, I didn't know what Juneteenth was until this year. And I'm like, I felt so like how did I not go through life not being educated on this? I asked some of my black friends, and they're like, "Don't worry, David, we didn't even know what it is too. It's more some of that's in the South." But what an important day that we all should be celebrating in our country. And those are the things that you just go through life, and sometimes you don't get educated on things like that.
I think it also starts in the schools.
100%.
Educating people on the history of our country, like the good, bad, and the ugly. There's a lot of ugly there, and we always kind of skim over it, and no one really knows what happens. And kids, you can't know what's offensive if you don't know why it's offensive.
Yeah.
And so I think, and I don't know how to accomplish change in that area, and that's why we need to continue to have these conversations and continue to find ways to change it. But it needs to start with education, because if they don't know, they can't change.
And I think that's where I think some athletes or, influential people, even just putting out information on history, on like real facts about history, I think helps open people's eyes, where when you see it's the actual facts, then it, like, when DeAndre with the Clemson thing, he was putting out, this is what John Calhoun said about slavery, and like, then you start to see, oh, I see why that's very offensive.
Most people don't know that.
Just education, I think, is really key. And that's
well, keep in mind, like, one generation removed, like our parents, they couldn't watch 13th, the documentary. They couldn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was either CBS, NBC, ABC, what they were taught in school. And that's pretty much it. Like, whatever the networks decided to show in terms of documentaries and things like that. Now with Google and the ability of the internet, you can open up and say, you know what, I'm going to educate myself on sex trafficking, or I'm going to educate myself on these different things that I may not just know innately. And that's what's exciting about future generations too, is like, you can educate yourself as much as you would like in a lot of different areas.
Yeah. I mean, social and the internet can be used in such a positive way if you so choose. Yeah.
If you find the right sources, no fake news. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Karin, I'd love to talk about Emmanuel a little bit more because I actually entered like a fireside chat with him and I asked him some questions, but he went from 44,000 Instagram followers to 720,000 in 6 weeks. So to your point earlier about someone that was passionate about a subject, could speak very eloquently on said subject, and now has a book deal with Oprah. Like, this is what we're talking about, of like, he entered himself into a conversation, and I think his first video that he got, Uncomfortable Conversations, had 30 million views across Twitter and social. But I think that's what we're all talking about, right? Is like, look what can happen if you hit it right there.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think he talks about how his first episode was supposed to be a conversation, and the person,
Rachel.
I think, Rachel or somebody dropped out. They couldn't for scheduling issues. And he was like, so he's like, you know what? I'm going to do it myself. He ended up having to do the first episode just him straight to camera, and it was like the biggest blessing in disguise, because I think that's why that first episode like resonated so strongly. And I talk to people a lot about that too. It's like, that's intellectual property. He created it himself, then he kept rolling with that, and now he has that to build into book deals and, you know, talk shows and everything. And it just takes sometimes even an iPhone and yourself, and you can really do that all the time. And this was a perfect case study to see, like, when you have a good idea and you do it in the right way, it can make profound impact on the world and then for your career.
That's awesome. I appreciate you guys having that conversation with me. I did want to switch topics a little bit. Lindsey, this is this is my French bulldog.
Oh.
But just got her like, I think 9 months ago now, so obsessed. So now I'm excited to talk about The Pack on Amazon and what this is all about, because I know you're a big dog lover like myself, but let us know what you're doing with that, because I was reading up a little bit on it, and it looks really interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely one of the most exciting things that's happened to me post ski career.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I kind of was looking for what I was going to do next, and they approached me and Lucy. You know, Lucy's really. I think I'm the co-host.
What's her contract look like?
Host.
Does she have to put her paw print on the contract too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Karin's technically her agent, so.
Got it.
But it was very challenging. It was amazing. It's such a great experience. We traveled the world. You know, Lucy always gets to go with me everywhere, but still, you know, we went. Am I even supposed to say?
No.
I can't say what we did, but we did some crazy
to be
stuff
continued.
Together. I mean, like.
Wait, does Lucy have an Instagram, by the way? She's on social, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I love Lindsey Vonn.
Got it.
Which actually could have been some of the reason they reached out, because like Lucy just kept being a prominent character in Lindsey's social and has her own social, and now Lindsey's a host of a show for it. So.
That's awesome.
Even dog accounts.
Yeah.
41,000 followers for Lucy. That's not too bad for.
Yeah, for a dog.
Yeah, for a dog.
I know, right? So
she has more followers than me. So.
She's gonna be, her social's gonna explode once the show comes out, and she's definitely a character. Her expressions are hilarious, and like I said, it was a challenge for me, but one that I really enjoyed taking on, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But I think people are really gonna like the show. If you like animals, if you like dogs at all, you're gonna die.
It's a good demo. A lot of people love that. I mean, what I read online, just so this is public, is 12 contestants and their dogs in a competitive challenge across multiple continents, and the winning owner will earn a $500,000 prize. So it's like a legitimate competition. I love it.
And $250,000 goes to the charity of their choice, the dog charity. And then we also gave away $250,000 to charities along the way. So each country that we stopped in, we helped a particular charity, whether we gave them supplies or improved their shelter or gave them, food or just money to help them. We helped every single country that we
That's awesome.
visited. So that was one of the coolest things for me. And that's one thing that I suggested. I didn't think they were going to take it on. Most people, if you say, I'd like to help, and I would like to help other dogs too. Most people, I imagine they would just say no, but Amazon actually was like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's help other dogs along the way. So it was very cool on a lot of different fronts.
That's awesome. So my company, STN, we actually run the On Her Turf account for NBC, which is a woman empowerment brand. And I know with your foundation, you're very focused on female youth empowerment as well. Would love to hear from you. Like, what would you like to see more of from men in general, men in sports, just supporting women in general, especially athletes?
Well, I think a lot of people pretend support women.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, like I support you, high five. But like, and when they go back to the locker room, they're like, yeah, that's a girl and she can't ball like we do. And I think that undertone needs to go away. I also think women need to do a better job of supporting other women. We tend to be very competitive with each other. And I think that is also a problem. But I do think, obviously, the women's movement is gaining tremendous speed and power and making progress on a lot of different fronts. But I think, the undertones and, the kind of catty backhanded comments need to go away to really change how women are viewed in sports and women are viewed in the world.
And I think we also talk a lot about, like, when we were growing up, there wasn't a lot of talk around, like, you're a girl, you have to do this. It was like, be the best.
Yeah. There was no girl or boy. There was no, like, be good for a girl, or like, it was all just be the best you can be. And that's always what we strove for. And so I don't feel like we grew up ever thinking about, boy versus girl, man versus woman, it was all just be the best.
But I think a lot of people do get that. And so, like, some of the things we try to teach with the foundation is, like, we talk about, like, negotiation skills. Like, women innately are, don't ask for as much in negotiations. And that's a skill that you can learn that can actually change the wage gap in some cases. I mean, not always, but it starts with knowing the skills to ask, to, to have,
not just take what you get.
Yeah. And like anti-bullying, like, we try to, like, give people skills so that they can hopefully get over some of those barriers that women face, and that they can start to strive beyond.
Exactly. And also we have a financial segment in our Strong Girls Camp, where we try to teach them how to save money and, how to manage their money, even though they're young. Like, no one taught me that. I think the only thing I learned in school was how to, manage a checkbook, which checks are obviously obsolete.
I didn't even learn that. You went to better school.
Yeah, I didn't get that class at all. They should do a taxes class.
Yeah, thank you.
Voting class.
Thank you.
But, if knowledge is power, right? If you know how to do these things, if you know that you need to save, you're not just, spending every single penny that you get. I think that long term will have dramatic effects. So we try to empower girls to have the knowledge to be able to make the right decisions and to hopefully lead themselves down a more successful path in life. Yeah.
That's awesome. The Sixers just fired their head coach, and people have been saying Becky Hammon for head coach. Let's get her in there. Let's it's time. That'd be awesome.
100%.
I want to kind of end on a couple additional things, like, I guess, more rapid fire, but partnerships. I see so many athletes getting this wrong in terms of just, and Karin, you know what I'm talking about, but, just selling to their audience or not having a cohesive partnership with the brand that really, you're being so genuine with your audience, like 90 times or 9 times out of 10, and then all of a sudden you throw this partnership in there that doesn't really make sense for your following. It's not genuine in nature and looks more like a commercial, which people don't want to see or don't expect from your feed. So I guess, how do you navigate that, Karin? And, like, what have been some good partnerships maybe with Lindsey or some of the other athletes that you've worked with?
Yeah, I mean, me and Lindsey were just talking about this, but it's, like, so key to have long-term, genuine partnerships with brands you actually use and trust, because, Lindsey, you can see in all of her workout videos, she's always wearing Under Armour and always, showcasing that product, but it's never an ad. It's always
product
truly
placement
who she is.
Yeah.
And so that makes it so it's 10 times more valuable for Under Armour, and then super valuable for her and her followers, because she's not posting, like, buy these new shoes right now. It's like, I'm constantly using this. This is, as a professional athlete, what I love. And then that genuinely translates to the audience. Mm-hmm. So it's challenging for sure. I think Lindsey's been super lucky, and her agents have been very smart to do, like, she has 10, 15 year, like, contracts with all of her companies.
Yeah, all of my sponsorships are all long term. Like I've never, awesome. And that's the thing that's important is you have to be authentic, as Karin said. And, I'm not going to promote something that I don't use. I want a long-term relationship with the company. I want to build together with the company. I don't want to just slap my name on something and get a paycheck. Like that's not how you have long-term success. And obviously there's some times where, you may need a little money like now. And so you do, some maybe one-off deals.
Right.
But you have to be very careful with that because anytime you're putting ads on your social, you potentially are losing followers, and you don't want to oversaturate that. People read through that so quickly on social because, you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic. That's why people are on social media. If you are not authentic, then they're going to say, well, F this person, I'm taking off. So you have to manage that really well. And, Karin's definitely helped me kind of sift through that because sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not that bad. And she's like, no, that's not.
And I think Gen Z, like the next generation, was born into seeing this stuff. So you're not tricking them. Like there's no way of like getting it under the rug that I was secretly
getting paid for something.
Like I almost think sometimes like you see some YouTubers and stuff are like, guess what? Skittles is sponsoring this and like they're giving me money so I can make this stuff. And that I think people even
more
like
genuine,
that transparency better. So I feel like just being aware of like what you're posting is what you stand behind, and also exclusivity. So like if you do one brand of toothpaste once, it might hurt. Like you're chipping away at all those categories. So you want to make sure you choose one and stick with it strong and get as long-term partnership as possible.
Lindsey, have you had those like tough situations in the past where like a brand's like, hey, we'll give you like 6 figures to do this thing, and you're like, I just can't because like it's gonna make me look so bad in front of my audience. I'm sure you've had to deal with that a lot.
Yeah, several times. I mean, I had even a 7-figure deal where I turned down because it just wasn't like I can't get behind something that I don't agree with. Like I have a foundation. Kids look up to me. Like all of those things come into account. And if I can't authentically stand behind it, it doesn't matter how much money I'm going to get. That's long-term going to hurt me more than help me.
Yeah. And the one thing too, I always tell athletes, sometimes people aren't in the position that Lindsey is where you can turn that stuff down. But the key thing is to not take like the exact promo graphic or widescreen commercial. Like don't agree to just post that. If you have to post something that's like semi one-off, make it yourself. Like be like, hey,
and I think athletes don't realize how much like leverage they have. Like, hey, more than happy to do that, but here's the way I want to do it. Like the brand's not going to be like, how dare you? You only can post this. Like they don't get social. They just post some copy in a commercial.
Lindsey's been like, I need a 4:5 edit, and they're like, it's a wide commercial. She's like, you want this to go big, and so do I. I need the 4:5.
4x5, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, but you do have the power because they want it to succeed as well. So. If you
and you know your audience more than anybody.
This is my audience. This is what they need. This is what I want to give them. Help me give it to them. Like let's work together to make this the right message because the corporate message isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And my favorite analogy I always say is you would never take a radio commercial that is not visual and slap it on TV, which is a linear platform. Why would you then take a TV commercial and slap it on social? Because I've seen that time and time again, and as we know, it just tanks. It just doesn't work well. It's not what people are there for. So, I would love to end thing on a positive note. Obviously, with everything going on with COVID, and it's been so difficult for so many people. But I think the positive thing I've been trying to take from it is like 2020 is the year of clarity in terms of how we treat each other, our perspective, our education. I guess I'll start with Karin and then move to Lindsey. But I guess during this entire 2020 from March 15th on, what have you learned the most, whether it's personal, career-wise, education? Like what has been the one thing that you've learned the most from this whole thing?
Oh, sorry, I'll wait for PK to walk by.
No worries.
Hey, stop. Oh my God. We're on a podcast.
Oh my gosh, sorry.
Keeping all that in, by the way. So.
I think COVID has taught me that you can be really creative and think outside the box a lot. So I've seen like in what I do every day, the brand deals or the content doesn't have to be movie quality all the time. You can get really high impact for really low cost, you can, make the same like brand impact with iPhone videos or Zoom calls as you can with a, $500,000 production. And it really, the message matters the most versus sometimes the content. And I think a lot of agencies and companies get caught up in how it looks, but it's really like the message that matters and what you're trying to achieve. And I think people on social really like that versus all the bells and whistles sometimes. So I think COVID has taught a lot of people like, hey, you can do Saturday Night Live via Zoom. And so what does that mean to all the money they're spending on the normal episodes? And I think it's helping people realize that you can be scrappier and have just the same impact. And on social, that means a lot for me because that's what I've been preaching for a lot of years is you have the power in your hand to create anything. And I think that COVID has really showcased that can be true.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think just in general in life, simplicity is bliss. We don't need all the bells and whistles to be happy. Being at home and spending time with your family and, realizing what's important in life has been great. And, for me, spending time with my fiance, which we never get to spend time because we're always traveling and working, and we're still working a lot at home, which, I could definitely deal without all the Zoom calls. But just, having that appreciation for what we have and who I love and family and friends, that's been really great for me. And then, from a business perspective, same thing. You don't need all the bells and whistles to make things happen. And most times just being yourself at home is the best message and the best strategy. And
I thought about it too, like with you and PK and your schedules, like, if not for this moment in history, like you guys probably don't sit down with an Emmanuel Acho because your schedules don't, work out. And then how many people and how many interracial relationships did that touch and be able to educate? So, in a sense, obviously there's a lot of bad with COVID, but those moments too have kind of opened themselves up as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't have done a lot of things this summer that, if not for COVID. And I hate saying that because I don't want COVID. I want to get rid of it entirely. But at the same time, I always try to find positives in every situation. I've been injured enough times where I'm pretty good at that now.
Yeah.
But there's always something positive you can take out of it, and appreciation for life and what we have is definitely what I've learned during this time.
Oh, let's end on that. Just some positivity at the end there. I appreciate that. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining and having this amazing conversation, educating the audience, dropping some knowledge, all that stuff. So thanks so much. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's been so fun.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay. Bye.
There it is. Thank you so much to both Karin and Lindsey for joining me on the program. Awesome stuff there. And I think, I thought it was important, Will, to talk about, as we record this episode, everything happened with the Jacob Blake situation, what's happening in the bubble at the NBA. And I really enjoyed getting their take on the DeAndre Hopkins story. Is pretty amazing and impressive what he was able to do just using his platform on social and making change to an institution with over 26,000 petition signatures, and all of a sudden he renames a building using his platform. Like, that's the type of stuff that I don't think a lot of athletes understand. I think DeAndre gets it, Lindsey gets it, a LeBron, a Tom Brady, a KD. I just don't know if the majority of athletes understand how you can actually use that platform for good.
And not only did he get the job done and get what he wanted changed, but maybe he inspired some other athletes somewhere in a different country, in a different sport, whatever, to say, you know what, I can use my platform as well to change things or fix something that's not right or the way it should be.
Well, and I've been stealing that phrase from Ray, who was on the gaming podcast, which I love, which is we've hit a reset button on society in 2020. And I think Lindsey hit that home too about the uncomfortable conversations and all those different things she's done within her family and sitting down with Emmanuel Acho and having these conversations with PK, but also saying, I'm not just going to post on social. Let's actually make a foundation. Let's actually try to, enact change in a different way, which I think is what we've talked a lot about on this show with this topic in particular. Is like, you can't just post, that something is ridiculous or something is absolutely deplorable. You actually have to put stuff in motion to make sure whether LeBron's done right with helping more people vote with voter suppression, and what Lindsey and PK are doing too with their different foundations.
Well, I think it kind of piggybacks off what Lindsey said about her contracts with like Under Armour and stuff, that she wants long-term stuff, not just a quick thing, a quick sale, like long-term things that are actually going to benefit people and create change. And whether that's on the sponsorship side,
right,
or actually,
it's all genuine.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was really interesting outlook from her.
Well, congrats again, man. Just getting an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, where do you go from here is the question. I mean, we talked about The Rock on the show. We talked about LeBron. I mean, maybe, who knows? The business is social.
I'm sure it's a pretty good feeling for Lindsey, but there's no bigger flex than saying, I have more followers than ESPN.
Yeah, exactly. But she gets it. I think Karin's helped her a ton. And I love that too. Like, just admitting like, well, I'm going to a lawyer for legal advice. I'm going to a financial planner to help me with my money. I need to go to like a social expert to see how the heck I use this 5 million person platform to my advantage, both on the monetary side and also, making change for good as well. And that is, I think, something that is really important. And I hope that a lot of athletes, especially this day and age, the younger guys coming up like Matisse Thybulle we've talked about, they seem to get that part. But actually going to somebody that understands the algorithm, and should we go on TikTok, and how should I approach this? It's it's not only social media, but sometimes it's PR crisis, strategy as well.
Well, I think an interview like this, and even getting those two in front of like new kids in college or new athletes that are pro, and saying, here's what you guys need to know about your social. Just like you said with the lawyer, and you guys have a lot of power.
Yeah,
you can do a lot of different things with your platform. Here's how to use that to the best of your ability.
And we had Kevin DeShazo on the show, and he goes into colleges and talks about the importance of social. He was asked in the beginning to tell athletes, stay off of social. It's all bad. It's going to make you look bad. It's going to get you suspended, things like that. And now that whole pendulum has shifted. Like, no, we want to use your social to kind of aid in our distribution of our initiatives, but also help you build your brand, which is, like Lindsey said, she's no longer on NBC Sports Olympic television, so she now can use her platforms to get that same type of eyeball. So
yeah, like she said, I don't need NBC to get my message out. I have the followers and I have the ability to do whatever I want. So,
but if you were to get your message out, I highly recommend hitting up NBC Sports first and foremost. That's just that's my opinion. All right, Will, Kelly, appreciate everything you do as well. Thanks to David Furker. We hope that you rate and review 5 stars. As well, as Will continues to preach in the team meetings here at ST and Digital, which I appreciate. But yeah, if you like it, go check it out on iTunes. If you get any knowledge, it's absolutely free. I mean, you can't beat it. Free 99. I mean, it's like you're making money at this point if you get anything from our show. We appreciate it. It's been awesome. These panel series have been incredible during this time as well. My name is David Brickley. This has been powered by ST and Digital. Thanks for coming on in once again to the business of social.